I'm not going to worry about individual fingers, but suggesting that this hand is coming around. And that's all I need to do for now. There's a little bit of skin underneath this fabric, so I want to go ahead and show that color underneath. And I can already tell that it's going to be difficult, most difficult to show this arm wrapping around, because her shoulder's out of the water, then the elbow goes in the water underneath, and then her hand comes back out. But again, not worried about individual fingers, just suggesting. So I've blocked in that basic skin color. Now I'm going to come in with some highlights. So I want to find a color that's a lot lighter, but not white. And this is what I've talked about: paint or draw what you see, not what you think you see. I'm worried about the highlights here. And I'm just barely touching this pastel. Now there's some people who actually cut the pastel down and use something, sandpaper, to get this nice point. I don't worry about that. Sometimes I may actually, on my test paper, try to see which corner of my pastel I need to use. So to get that nose, I want to just suggest it. I can kind of blend a little bit just to soften. There's a little bit of reflected light there. There's some light above the lip. And I can feel myself getting tighter as I start to do this. So it's really important, when you start to feel tight, step back. And then really look at how that's working. Painting, and especially pastel painting, but any painting really, if you're trying to show something realistic, you're basically painting light against dark. So I'm suggesting this is a jawline here, and I'm just showing that that's the jawline, but there's a dark shadow next to it. There's a highlight on the ear. There's a little highlight on the neck. So I'm coming in, blocking in the highlight here on the top part of the breast. And this is lighter in this area. And again, if I go too light or too dark, I don't stress. I just put more pastel back over it, the correct value or color. Nice little highlight here as her hand curves around. And I noticed there was a knuckle here to suggest the fold. So as I'm laying in her highlights, if I get it a little too bright or the angle's a little wrong, I don't want to come in and fix it immediately. Instead, I want to just lay in the next correct color or value. So the way that I paint, whether figures, water, landscape, doesn't matter, when I use pastels or any color media, I actually go back and forth between light and dark. To me, that's the best way for my brain to work and the paintings to work the best. So I put in an overall skin color, kind of a medium value, after I delineated some of the dark. Then I came in and did some of the highlights. Now what I want to do is go back in with the dark. Now, when people work, they have a tendency to go for black or the easy colors black and white for lights and shadows. Instead, I'm going to use a darker green or blue-green. This is when having little small pieces works even better. And I may just test it over here. I want to help the shape of her head a little bit more. Again, don't want to go in and press down too hard, and I will add her brown later, but I want to get that shape of her head better. I think I've made it a little too big. But again, draw what you see, not what you think you see. And I did make it a little too big. So I'm going to try to cut this back a little bit. And I have to keep stepping back to see how this is going to work. And then you'll see in the final, when everything's all said and done, the proportions will be much more accurate. But it's good in the beginning to kind of figure out if it's working right or not. You don't want to spend a lot of time stressing over every detail, but especially with figures, if that head is too big or the angle's off, it's not going to work quite as well. And this is actually cutting back in here. Now, you can see how this is really hard edge. What I can do is take a relatively clean finger and just soften that up a little bit, and then I will take care of that later. So I don't need to worry anymore over that. I'm going to come back into the dark. And no eyeballs, no eyelashes, don't even do that. Instead, you're looking for shadows and highlights. So there was a little bit of shadow where that eye socket is set back in the skull. I'm not going to worry about the highlights and the other stuff yet. I'm going to come in and maybe suggest a little bit of a hairline here. A little bit more there. There's a little shadow under the nose, and I just wanted to do a little dink. In other words, don't worry about outlining the nose. If you try to outline even with a really crisp edge, like a hard edge pastel, and you have it at perfect point, it still won't look right. So just think about the form. And there's a nice shadow under her chin here. And this is going to take some going back and forth, but I want to go ahead and suggest the outside of her face. And I'm suggesting that because of this dark shoulder. Now, at this point, I need to stand back again to see. And I'm going to take a relatively clean finger and just kind of blend that out because that didn't work as well. Always good to see the mistakes too. The process. And then I think I'm going to leave that for now. If I work on an area for too long, go back and forth, have a tendency to overwork it. So if I rework something more than 2 or 3 times, I try to move to another area because the overall painting will be better. And I probably won't even work on that particular area until another day tomorrow when I'm back in my studio and finishing this painting. So again, I just want to kind of suggest there's a little shadow under there. We've got this whole area is in shadow here, so I drag that line. Got a little shadow here. And you can see how she's starting to pop off a little bit more of the paper. She's coming out. Again, anatomy is so important. There's a little bit of a line there. So what's going on in the neck here is kind of tough to show with just my little marks, but if I show the light and dark, I will, in the end, have a piece that looks like this woman, or resembles a woman and not a man in the water, as she looked in the beginning. I just want to block in a little bit of this. And again, there's a little shadow here for the breast area. And you can see how she's starting to actually become not only a little more human, but a little more feminine. And there's some nice deep darks in here, so I'm going to go ahead and block those in. And then I'm almost through with this segment. So what will happen, you're seeing the very important ugly beginning stage and the evolution of the painting. I will go back to my studio with the same photograph, same original painting, and I will finish it, and it probably will take me another 2 or 3 hours, and I will not work on it all at one time. Instead, I'll work a little bit, then put it away, come back to it when I'm fresh. And that's really a better way to work with the figures. I hope this has helped you both with water and the figure, and thank you for joining us.